Hello, Vibers. It's Kai here with another episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast. Today, we're diving deep into the world of therapy, focusing on the importance of finding that perfect fit when it comes to your mental health journey. Too often, we might settle for the first name that we see online, but today's guests, Chelsie Maccarone and Andrea Santiago, are here to enlighten us on why that may not be the best strategy. So, whether you're seeking therapy for the first time or reevaluating your current therapeutic relationship, this episode is for you. Today, we have two very special guests who are true experts in their field. Firstly, we have Chelsie Maccarone, who you probably know already because she's been on my podcast 8 million times. And I love having her, so I'm happy to have her back. Chelsie Maccarone of Healthy Minds and More Counseling Services, a licensed mental health counselor who passionately believes in the balance of a healthy body and mind. With her diverse experience, she beautifully integrates fitness, nutrition, and counseling into her therapeutic approach. Her journey, starting from her childhood involvement in performing arts to working with children, and now as a licensed counselor, showcases her commitment to bringing balance and peace into the lives of her clients. Next, we have Andrea Santiago. I'm trying to say it as white as I can. Andrea,
On air.
I'm trying. Now we're joined by Andrea Santiago of Gemstone Wellness, right?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure of Gemstone Wellness. As a licensed clinical professional counselor, Andrea boasts a rich background in crisis intervention and trauma recovery, especially with children and adolescents. Her eclectic approach to therapy, which ranges from cognitive behavioral therapy to mindfulness-based interventions, truly tailors the therapeutic experience to each individual. And with her bilingual skills, Andrea further emphasizes inclusivity in her mental health care. Both Chelsie and Andrea have dedicated their careers to helping individuals navigate their mental health journeys, emphasizing the importance of individuality and best fit. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to these two incredible, amazingly awesome individuals, Chelsie and Andrea. Hi. Did you like that intro?
That
Yeah, that was
intro was
great.
amazing. Wow.
I
I've never felt more
I
special.
I practiced that in the mirror 17 times this morning.
Nice.
Yeah,
I
it's
did.
funny
I
because
did.
like listening to it, I'm like, wow, I gotta update my bio because I feel like I've grown so much since that was written.
I
Yes.
was just thinking, I was like, wow, like you nailed my bio.
I,
Second
you know,
take.
it's, I'll tell,
Nice.
yeah, I'll tell you why though. I can't tell you how many times I've been a guest on somebody's podcast and they did no research on me whatsoever. In fact, I did a podcast, I would say a couple months ago, where the person was, I signed on to the Zoom thing, and the person was like, "So, tell me about you." And I was like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "What do you do? What's your platform about?" I'm like, "Wait, do you even know who you have as a guest right now? Like, what is this? What is this?" And
Yeah.
I promised myself I would never do that to anybody. So I'm glad that I got your bio. Like, there you
Yeah,
go.
it worked out really well. Yeah.
Yes, thank
Mhm.
you. So obviously people know Chelsie already, but I want to introduce people to Andrea. Andrea, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here today, my friend?
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor at Gemstone Wellness here in Illinois. We are very big on providing psychological insight oriented therapy. And the work that we do is also that of just finding healing and reconciliation with trauma and whatnot.
Mhm.
One of the things that I specialize in, or two, I specialize in both uh, grief and loss and life transitions. And so those most of my caseload and most of the clients that I have that come and see me are usually those that are working through some kind of loss of some sort, loss
Mhm.
either to a parent, a child, a
Mhm.
friend, a you name it, it's there. And
Right.
then for life transitions, that also actually does have some grief and loss elements, but also is just
Mhm.
movement through different transitions that you're going through.
Right.
And during those transitions, we're always undergoing questions of like, who are we? What am I
Mhm.
doing? Is this the right
Right.
choice? So
Mhm.
increased anxiety and depression tend to happen there, plus just kind of identity
Mhm.
crisis, existential crisis, and
Like
what am I doing?
everything that you're describing about life changes and crisis, that's like every 30 minutes for me. What am I doing? Why am I here? Who are these people? Why am I
Yeah,
doing this?
yeah, yeah. I mean, and so the therapy process, really, what I like to do is just walk people through that to allow
Yeah.
yourself to show them grace, because not that we can consciously know, maybe on a spiritual
Mhm.
realm, but we haven't lived this life. So all the choices we're making are new and they're different. And we're simultaneously experiencing things while we're having it.
Yeah.
And Chelsea's daughter has joined us
for,
today.
for those of you that are listening and not watching, on the corner of your screen, you're going to see a lovely little angel over there who is adorable, and we agreed it's okay that this is happening, because I'm sure at some point during this interview, my cats will come up out of nowhere and probably just like try to cuddle, because they always like to come over when I'm busy. When I'm here, just me by myself listening to music, they don't want anything to do with me. Nothing. So,
Yeah.
so it's all good. So no, thank you for sharing that. And so, with that said, one of the things that I had to ask, I was like, okay, what do you want to talk about today? And you both were talking about how important it is, to find that right therapist for you, and how that process, can be. I know that I'm a testament of this as well, where it took me a couple times. It took me a couple times to find the right fit for me, and I think a lot of people don't realize that that's how it works. That like sometimes it's going to take some time. So, Andrea, since you just introduced yourself, if you don't mind, just talking a little bit, what advice would you give for somebody that's initially searching for a therapist that's right for them?
Oh man, it's funny because I feel like also, as much as like I'm speaking of this from a therapist perspective, I'm also speaking from a human perspective, because it does take some time to shop around.
Yeah.
And so I feel like one thing I would say is that to go ahead and read through these bios, also ask for a 15-minute consultation from every single therapist.
Mhm.
Yeah.
A nice brief 15-minute consultation. I know, Chelsea, you offer that, right?
Yeah.
When you first,
Yeah.
like we both
Mhm.
offer that to clients.
Most therapists do.
Most do,
Mhm.
yeah.
And if they don't go see them.
I would definitely not see them. No,
Right,
I would definitely not see
right.
them, because the whole point of that 15-minute consultation is a twofold thing, right? It's for you as the client to get to feel, who is this person that I'm going to
Mhm.
be vulnerable with? Like,
Right.
can I trust this person on the other end? Do I feel safe with this other person? When I hear
Mhm.
their voice, is it something that I can like, oh, I can gravitate towards, or is it something where it puts me on edge? And I think
Mhm.
just having that awareness when you're going into those consultations is really important. And then,
Right.
of course, making sure, okay, if I'm going to a therapist for, let's say, anxiety, but this therapist specializes in prenatal care, which is great,
Mhm.
don't get me wrong, that might not
Right.
be the therapist for you, though. You might want the
Right.
one that's,
Right.
hey, my niche is anxiety, if
Right.
you will.
Right. Right. Right.
So
So no, that
although,
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Mhm. No,
I was going
please.
to say, so although Andrea and I overlap with life transitions, you're not going to come see me for grief and loss. Right. But I'm specialized in perinatal. You're probably not going to go see Andrea for perinatal.
There you go.
Even though
Right.
perinatal is a life transition and grief and loss is a life transition, it's just that's her niche, this is my niche, And so
Right.
I think really, yes, reading through those bios, which can be so daunting, and I
Mhm.
know the 15-minute consultations can also be daunting. So if you're utilizing like a directory, like a Psychology Today or something like that, they have filters. So you can filter out like the specialties of
Mhm.
what you're looking at. So at least it's not this overwhelming list from your insurance company if you're using
Right.
insurance. You know what I mean? You
Right.
can actually filter some of the people. Now finding someone with openings, that's another story.
Right.
True,
Right.
true.
So, and from both of your perspectives, it goes both ways, right? So like, how for you, how does understanding a client's culture and background and language, how does that play a role in the initial relationship as well? Chelsie, I'll throw that to you.
So I mean, for me, like I do my due diligence, like I do my
Mhm.
trainings, like the anti-racism and like
Mhm.
learning your intrinsic bias and stuff like that. However, there are some times where I can tell that it's just like not a match, and
Mhm.
it's maybe not even cultural. It's just like you can tell the person doesn't trust you. You could tell the person's
Mhm.
uncomfortable, whether it be a shift in like their voice, their tone, their inflection, or if
Mhm.
it's a video consultation, maybe some of the little shifting, like you can kind of
Mhm.
tell when someone's not really comfortable. Sometimes through asking certain questions too, they'll originally say, oh yeah, I have anxiety, but you also then find out like their dad died last year and they haven't really
Right.
unearthed that, and that's where the anxiety is coming from. And so for someone like me, I'd be like, oh, you need to call my friend Andrea. I'm not the
Right.
grief,
Right. Right.
and so I think it's just also knowing as a therapist on that 15-minute consult what questions to ask so that
Mhm.
you can get a quick snapshot of what's really going on, because presenting
Right.
problems usually isn't what's really going on.
It's never the presenting problem. It's never what people come in necessarily. They might initially come in, it might be one thing, but it goes so much more deeper than that. So being able to get like a lot like other questions asking about like what's your family background, like all those different things within that 15-minute consultation is really important. Getting and feeling it too. I mean, there is not one set fit therapist for everyone. In fact, if there's a therapist that's saying they can do it all, run, because they probably cannot. And it's supposed to work that way, right? We're supposed to be in a place where we can specialize in one niche thing, and that's where we pour all our energy into.
As much as agencies tell you no.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious. So like from a client perspective, are there certain signs from that like that the client should look for in a therapist that might be like, I don't know, because I like you had mentioned earlier about from your end, you know, maybe there's a shift in tone, or maybe there's like there's a deeper part of the story, and so on and so forth. So from a client perspective, does it also go the same? Is it like, my therapist is talking to me a little differently today, I don't know if this is a fit? Does it go the same way?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the thing. Like, it's like with anything, right? You have to trust your gut, like on certain things. I know that can be hard at times, but you'll feel it and you'll know. I've talked to a couple of therapists where I'm just like, no, like you sound great, just not for me, you know, and which is fine, and that's completely okay. I think it would be a disservice if you have if you try to make it work as a client with someone that you don't feel like you can trust. Because then what's the point? The point is to come and to be able to feel like you can be vulnerable, feel safe to be yourself, just be open. And if you can't do that right from the get, and you're already picking that up from that phone call, that's probably not the one.
Right.
I mean, we were actually kind of touching on, we started recording, like how Kai, when you and I first met, like we had this like good vibe. We felt like kindred spirits, like whatever, like we just kind of vibed. And so you have that in your personal life, you have that with your friends, your tribe, like you have people that you just gravitate towards, and you also have that in the therapeutic relationship. You can feel it, you know, the same feel it when you pick your friends.
Even through a screen, because it's funny because you and I have never met like in real life yet, right? But the day that we do, like I'm gonna give you a big ass hug. Like it's gonna be like, hey, it's like I don't know you. I've never met you. For all I know, you're an AI. I don't know. Are you real? I don't know. I'm trusting you.
I know.
But it's funny how that you know kind of goes down. But what's really interesting, you were mentioning earlier about how a person may not communicate everything that's needed. Like I think the example that you gave was talking about like anxiety, and come to find out their father had passed away and all of that. So like with that said, how can somebody effectively communicate their needs if they're not quite sure what the needs are? Like how do they even initially start that conversation?
I was gonna say, I think just answering questions as truthfully as you can, right? Like you might not know, oh, the grief is really creeping up, but the way you openly answer your therapist's questions on that consultation call, they're gonna hear it.
Yeah.
Because we're trained to hear that kind of theme.
Right. Yeah.
You're right.
And I think also the fact that if you feel like there is this hesitancy or this like trepidation, the therapist is going to know that stuff and is going to gauge, okay, is this because you're nervous to talk with me, which is totally normal. It makes sense when we're first meeting. Again, I'm someone you've never met before. You've got to feel that. Or is it one of those where, okay, I still feel nervous just because of the topic matter I'm speaking about, but I'm going to speak openly and freely and take this leap of faith into this and see where it lands. And that's a whole different story. That's where you're like, oh, okay, that's the person like starting to warm up. That might be actually a good fit because they trust you enough to be able to take that leap. They're just nervous about what they're leaving for.
Right.
So, for example, like I was actually calling therapists for myself, and I did a free consultation with one woman, and the way she spoke to me, so like you can tell I'm kind of like my energy's like up here a little bit. I have that like high energy, and she just brought me down. Like I could feel my energy shift on the phone with her, and she had such a soothing energy about her and a soothing voice, and like she asked me questions that were kind of provoking, but like also really like led me to a lot of introspection, and I was like, this is the therapist for me. My consultation calls are not like that. Like I I kind of use humor. I use a lot of customer service. Like my consultation will sound different than hers. So I might not be like, you know what I mean? So I don't know, like, it's just,
Right.
that's how you
And there's no right or wrong way. There's no like one way, because every person is different, every brain is different, every body is different. So, you know, that kind of approach that worked for you, Chelsie, may not work for somebody else, and vice versa, right? Yeah,
and the way I do
I
my
find that
consult
interesting.
calls wouldn't work for me as a client. You know what I mean? Because I'm already
Yeah.
up here. I don't need somebody up there with me.
Right, right. The whole area would just explode. It would just be like a
Could
beautiful
you imagine
explosion.
a therapist like me with me? No.
I would pay. I would pay to watch that. I would. So like okay, so let's just say it's a good fit. The 15-minute consultation goes down. Everybody's like, all right, bet, I'll see you in a couple weeks or whenever, however the cadence is, right? That evaluation, is it ongoing? Is every session something like that you have to reevaluate, or are you at that point, once the 15-minute consultation is done, is it like, okay, I'm going to give it 3 sessions and then I'm going to reevaluate? How often should people be evaluating this?
Yeah, I was gonna say I like to give it like, and I tell this to my clients usually like from day one, that even in spite of the fact that we had a phone consultation, we felt like we clicked, and I'm pretty sure we do. I still allow them to the benefit of the doubt. I tell them straight up, like, let me know how you're feeling about this, because this only works with how far you're gonna let me like go, and I'm not gonna force you to go somewhere you're not ready to go. I might nudge and be like, hey, there might be something around here, you know, but I'm never going to force you to go somewhere until you say, hey, let's walk through this together. And so I feel like those first like couple sessions, I actually tell them, I'm like, I ask them a presuppositional question at the end of the session, usually like, how did you feel?
What?
She's walking Webster.
A pre what?
A presuppositional question.
That's not a word.
Yeah.
It's
that's not a word. You just made up that word. Let me call Mr. Webster. Let me call Mr. Webster. Look up his dictionary. A pre what? What did you say?
A presuppositional question.
I've seen that movie. It's a great action movie. It's not real. What is that word? What does that mean?
A little bit when you say it that way.
Are you speaking Klingon? What is that? what is that word? You just made it up.
I told you she's great.
It's what it basically is. It's just asking a question, basically a check-in, like seeing if this would supplement like to the work that we've been doing. That's what a
Don't look at me. I don't know what that word means.
So say that. You don't have to make up a word. You don't have to make up a word for it. Just say what you just said. I don't know.
She says words all the time, and I'm like,
right. Like once you hit, for me, once you hit like 3 syllables or more, like I'm gonna have questions.
You're like my ADHD cannot hold me to it.
I couldn't even pay attention. I don't know. I'll be honest, Andrea, I don't know how that word ended. I lost it halfway through. My ADHD was like, nope.
In between the syllables.
Yeah. Just dot, like a period at the end of each one.
Oh my god, that's funny. I'm gonna wait. I learned the word defenestrate the other day. Do you know what that means?
I have no idea.
It means it means to like to toss yourself out a window, or toss somebody out, or toss something or somebody out a window. Defenestrate. Defenestrate.
I mean,
can you use it in a sentence?
Yeah, that's what I was like.
Keep messing with me, and you're going to be defenestrated.
Defenestrated.
I know.
Wow. Yeah.
So now I'm trying to use it in every situation. Like I was at Starbucks. I'm like, oh, can I get a mocha latte? If not, defenestration. And then it looks.
People are like, what?
They're like, okay, sure.
I also just realized that was your mic and not your shirt.
You didn't? Oh yeah, I did blend into it. Actually, your mic.
I don't know what just happened, but okay, I'm with you.
My ADD kicked in.
Yeah,
right there with you. No, you're good. So wait, so quick question. So you were talking about like how you should go to therapists because that's what we're talking about today. Therapy.
What's the topic tonight?
I forgot. I don't know. What are you talking? Whatever the topic is, whatever word you friggin' made up just 5 minutes ago. I'm kidding. So you were talking about how like somebody should go to a professional that has a specific niche, like something that's right for them. So like as as professionals, as these really important people, how do you stay up to date on all of these niches? Is there like a newsletter that's like Depression Weekly? Like what, how do you,
It really is.
There actually is a couple
there
newsletters.
is
There are some things like that.
Depression Weekly? How
Yes, or Pessy or whatever.
Pessy. That's it.
does Depression Weekly start off with the word "welp"? Is that
Well, that was a downer.
Is it like another newsletter? Enjoy it, I guess.
No, they come out with all these trainings all the time.
They do, and also part of our licensure is we have to maintain CEUs, so continuing education units.
Just like a doctor.
Yeah, so we continuously have to keep taking all these different CEU courses and whatnot.
Yeah.
He's cracking
He's still
up.
laughing about your word that I can't say again.
Presuppositional question. He's like, "What did you just say
I'm
to
still
me?"
on it. That's not a word.
It is a word.
He's gonna
It
like
is a word. I know. I believe
Google
you.
at the end of this, and then he's gonna be like, "Wow, she was right about this word."
That's you assuming that I know how to freaking spell it in the first place.
You're gonna try and say it again into Siri.
I can't even say it now. I don't even remember what the word is. That's
I'll
how
email it.
like. Please do.
We'll write it out phonetically.
Yeah, please do. Actually, so Andrea, you do both English and Spanish, right?
Yes.
In your practice, how important is that? Do you find that people are more likely to come to you, or do you get a certain like type of clientele that may not feel comfortable talking to somebody that doesn't speak like fluent Spanish?
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's super important because there's a lot of people that want to be able to express themselves in their native tongue. And that's really hard if you're going to a therapist who is maybe of a different culture, speaks a different language than you. Maybe English is your second language, so suddenly it's not like as present. Sorry, there's a helicopter. Yeah, sorry about that. A little bit random.
My ADHD kicked in again, and I have no idea what you just said.
We can't hear you. It's like right there.
It sounds
like
it sounds like a machine gun. It sounds like you are in a war zone right now. And so anybody that's not watching and just listening right now, like they're like, I hope they're okay.
Yeah,
We're fine.
Yeah, right.
We're just sitting outside because my kid and my husband are watching.
Fine. No, you're fine. You're fine. So you were saying that people want to feel more comfortable speaking in like their native tongue as opposed to speaking in their second language.
Yeah, absolutely. And also just being able to express yourself in your own culture. I think there's something about being able to speak to someone who came from a similar background as you. So we all know about like, oh yeah, we know about like a stereotypical thing I'm just going to throw out there. We know about Vicks. Vicks heals all. Yeah, that's a Latina like
yes,
known thing, you know? And it's, I mean,
you got him while he was drinking. It's coming out his nose.
He's sitting there. He's like, I am never having this interview with these two again.
That almost happened.
Most on this one because this is also borderline stand up.
A little bit. We're giving you some material.
Oh man. Okay. Yes. No. I hear you. I spent time I just flew in from Tulum. I was in Tulum, Mexico, this past week. And so I was staying at a resort at the Hilton, and obviously the entire staff, spoke Spanish. But I could tell, even from like the wait staff to the front desk people, I could tell that like obviously English is their second language, and they were trying so hard to not only speak it, but understand what we were asking for sometimes. And I could see the shifts in demeanor even sometimes when they were able to communicate in Spanish with somebody. Like it was like a shift, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, I wish I could help. I wish I could, not be obsessed with French and be obsessed with Spanish a little bit more and like learn it. And because I could just tell that they felt like very comfortable speaking in that language. So I would imagine it's the same in therapy, right?
Yeah, very much so. And finding a therapist too, like if it's not even just with me with Spanish, like if you're someone who identifies as Asian and you are looking for someone who can also do that in whatever Asian language that you have, that's important. Or someone that comes from a Native American background as well. Or those elements are so important, I think, as well.
It's really funny too because like, when we were in school, they teach us like not to tell personal stuff about ourselves, like don't even have a picture of your family on your desk type thing. And then now that I'm in private practice, it wants it asks if you want to disclose your faith. And for a long time, I juggled with that, but I finally did disclose my faith. And I've actually gotten a few clients that are of the same faith because they were looking for a Jewish therapist.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so I just thought that was really interesting too, because I'm not a spiritual, like I'm not like a Jewish therapist. Like they have Christian therapists out there. Like I'm not a Jewish therapist by any means, but just having those like little nuances or just comfort, you know, to process, you know, their fear of the rise in anti-Semitism or whatever, like just having some space for that.
Right.
And I do know with some of my clientele that is, you know, biopic, right? Like I make sure I let them know from the get-go, like I'm totally Caucasian, but I'm an ally. Because I know from friends, from professionals, that you never know what kind of white person you're sitting across from.
Yeah, that's true. Trust me, I know.
No. Yeah. And so I try it, like, even though sometimes it is uncomfortable because, you know, I know, whatever it is, but I always try and like break that ice and like, hey, like I'm an ally, like I'm here. I might not know what it's like to walk in your skin tone, but
right.
You know,
and
so I do try.
So what happens? Let's just say, you know, how does somebody, I guess, advocate for themselves, right? So they're in therapy. They feel like it's not working. How do they go about advocating for themselves and saying, "Hey, this isn't working"? Because I would imagine it's kind of like initiating like a breakup, even like in a relationship. Like it's really awkward. It's really weird. For some people, do you have any like tips or tricks that people can utilize when they want to, in a way, break up with their therapist? Like what is a good course of action there? Because it's hard.
Question. I think that's a really good question.
I've been doing this for 3 years. Can you tell?
Yeah, I mean, okay. So there's always the honesty piece, like just being honest, like, hey, like I feel stuck. The thing is, like, if you do have a good therapist, your therapist is going to feel it.
That's true.
And they're going to check in, like, hey, I feel like we're kind of stuck. Do you feel the same way? Or, you know, here we've kind of circled back around to the same sticking point. Do you want to explore other therapists? Like, you know, they'll bring it up, right? Like if you have a good therapist, you know,
Usually.
They'll bring it up. But sometimes it's just like, I had someone just text me like, hey, I'm going to look for somebody that can like prescribe meds and like just send me a text, which I mean, I guess that's not ideal, but like if you really feel uncomfortable having the actual vocal conversation, text, email.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've had a client themselves actually reach out and say, hey, you know, I don't actually think I feel like we're at an impasse at this point. I don't feel like we can go anywhere else. And I said, you know, I thank you for your honesty. I'm so glad you were able to say that. Let's look for something that can best fit you now. Maybe the therapist was only meant to walk you to this point, and then you get another person that holds your hand and walks you to the next point, kind of thing. And that's totally okay. And I think, if anything, it's really important too to be able to say as therapists, you know what, that's okay. If you feel that that's what you need, we need to respect what you need. You know yourself better than anyone else. So we'll go with that for you, you know?
Right.
Like when I was a client, one time I just ghosted a therapist because he was awful.
Ugh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was in a session with him. It was a couple session, and he's like, hey, you, I'm talking to you. And I thought he was talking to my husband. And instead of saying, hey, Chelsie, I'm talking to you, like that question was for you, it was like this snap.
Not the stop of the fingers, really?
Yeah, I told you that.
Yes,
story.
I remember that, and I still.
So I ghosted him. So I think it just depends also on like the situation. I just didn't.
Yeah.
There was no point.
People that snap their fingers at like waiters and stuff, like for like attention, is I can't stand. I served tables and I bartended for 7 years of my life, like all throughout like college and a little bit after college. People would do that and I used to hate that so much. I would purposely ignore them. Purposely.
Yeah. It's exceptionally like rude that therapist did that, especially a therapist.
A therapist.
I hope that's awful. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. That's not okay.
It's a laughing point now, but in the moment, I was like,
but in the moment, oh my gosh.
Audacity.
One of the things that I hear a lot on my platform on Instagram and stuff, whenever I talk about therapy, there's a lot of people that say, you know what, I tried it, I had a really bad experience, it was a waste of time, it was a waste of money, I don't want to go through that again. What if there's anybody out there that's listening or watching right now that have had that experience, what would you say to them right now?
I'm sorry. There's a lot of bad therapists out there. I know I'm
Yeah.
giggling, but like,
Mm-hmm.
you just heard my experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, definitely. Like, I'm sorry, there are a lot of bad therapists out there, but also
Mm-hmm.
maybe like, you know, it's kind of like trying on a pair of shoes. You want to try on the one that fits instead of trying to shove your foot in a like boot that is just too tight, or
Mm-hmm.
Size 6.
or a size 6 or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to say, hey, I think I need a size 9. And
Mm-hmm.
it's okay that you were upset that maybe you spent all that time and energy going with that size. It didn't work out, or the style, or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean you wouldn't try to go and get another pair of boots. You just want the one that's better fit.
Right.
And so
Right.
allowing yourself to say, you know what, it was a bad experience, and saying, yeah, it was. It was a crappy experience. It shouldn't have happened. That's not going to be all my experience.
And what an amazing learning experience too.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
so the snappy guy, no 15-minute consultation with him. He just had
Mhm.
openings. So I took it. Now I know I had openings. And then the one that I was free consultation, I'm actually with her now, and she's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I had a bad experience, but now I learned from it. I'm going to do a consultation call.
Mhm.
And then if you did the consultation call and had a bad experience, well, maybe just tweaking the questions that you're asking.
Mhm.
You know, you now have a better idea of what you're looking for, because
Yeah.
every experience is a learning opportunity.
Right, right. So I want to go back to niches just for a second, because
Yeah.
one of the things that popped up in my head as you were talking, like we were talking about going to somebody with a specific niche. What if the person knows maybe they're suffering with, are trying to manage anxiety, depression, PTSD, ADHD, like it's multiple things that they're trying to deal with. How do they go about finding a person that can handle multiple approaches there, like multiple things that they feel like they might be diagnosed with? What should they do?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that's like the thing about it too is that there are some things that do overlap, especially like even some
Mm-hmm.
of the stuff you named, like anxiety, depression, ADHD, like
PTSD.
PTSD. There
Mm-hmm.
are some things that do overlap. Now, don't get me wrong, there is something that are just niche, like specifics, right? But something
Mm-hmm.
like that, those are like, those seem to be like almost like a Venn diagram where things kind of overlap this way. So a lot of that stuff in the center, like ADHD, for
Mm-hmm.
example, and anxiety are actually part of the anxiety like disorders.
Mm-hmm.
And PTSD also kind of gets confused in there sometimes too, even though it's more trauma based. And so there are some things that lump together that actually have overlap, and then within them they have more specifics down. So someone
Right.
who may have all four of those things, it may still work out to be with someone who specializes in anxiety and ADHD,
Right.
and then
Mm-hmm.
they work through the trauma as well. Most therapists tend to be trauma informed. That's something that actually is really important.
Yeah, trauma informed. Most therapists are, but they definitely should
Right.
be. And I just toggle those filters, because it will.
Yeah.
There are therapists that are like, "Ooh, I like this. Let me go get trained in another thing, and let me go." And they do. They have multiple trainings and
Right.
across multiple things.
Right.
There are therapists who have like niched in like 3 or 4 things too, and
Right.
that's like
Right.
niche.
Yeah, and I'm very curious because I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this. I know a lot of times, like I always have to remind myself that I speak from a position of privilege, right? Like I'm very fortunate to have the insurance that I have. I'm very fortunate to have the job that I have and the resources and friends and family that I have. But there are a lot of people out there that are watching or listening right now that don't have a lot of options when it comes to choosing therapists, like, or choosing a specific niche and all that. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask on their behalf, what should they do if they feel like they just don't have the options to get the help that they need?
Yeah, yeah. That's always a really like tough one, but I do think that there's a lot of like private practices out there that are also doing some pro bono like sliding scale like places too that will go ahead and see clients outside of insurance. Maybe something low feed or maybe sometimes free, depending on which ones they're offering. But and then you're seeing a therapist that may have that specialty but is doing it like
Yeah.
for free,
Right.
in essence, or a low cost.
And also too, the colleges.
psychologist, yeah.
You know, then you have a professor overseeing, and you usually have a PhD candidate or student, you know, doing the interventions. So, I mean, those are pretty good and affordable, and you're getting decent care.
And you had mentioned psychology today as a resource. Are there any other resources that people can consider when it comes to finding the therapist that's right for them and the niche that they're looking for?
Google and Yelp.
Google and Yelp. Fair enough.
Therapy Den is another one.
Therapy Den.
Yes, that's another one.
Jeff from Therapy Den. That's him, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also, I think, let's say you're looking for someone specific with, like, I'm looking for a Christian therapist. Like, you can type that in, or they have some platforms that way. Or I'm looking for a Latinx therapist, or I'm looking for a queer therapist.
Yeah.
They have some platforms out there too. Like, if you just Google it, that will come up, and you can just kind of look in there, and they have from whether they're low cost or insurance based or self pay or sliding scale. They all.
Right. I appreciate, like, honestly, you both so much for providing this stuff, and because this is helping more people than any of us could realize. Chelsie, like, after our last, like, we did a mock therapy session in our last talk. I can't tell you how many messages I got from people about that episode specifically, more so than I normally get, about the mock therapy session. People really got something out of that. So like this kind of talk and all of that, like, it really does go a long way. And for anybody that's watching or listening, the resources are out there. You know, I therapy is always going to be a good option, you know, for you. I always recommend talking to a mental health professional, you know, because it's just like, it helps. They can help guide you and provide you these tools and resources that you may not be able to find anywhere else, number one. And number two, they're specialized for you specifically. You know, they're things that are made for you and the things that you're going through. So my final question to the both of you, how can we as a community in the mental health world, especially when it comes to niche therapy, what can we do to reduce the stigma surrounding therapy?
Great question.
That is a great question. You want to take it?
I don't know the answer yet. Reducing the stigma around therapy.
I think we need to educate what therapy is. A lot of people don't know what it is.
They have that misconception because of like what media portrays and the movies portray.
And they do a terrible job
at
conveying. Unfortunately, they have us doing some like unethical.
Right. There's always a therapist sleeping with a client. Always.
Wait,
and it's like,
oh my God, I saw there was a show with Naomi Watts, I think it was, where she was a therapist that like slept, or she, to get to know her client, it's called Gypsy. I don't know if you heard of this or not. So she plays a therapist, and in order to get to know her client, she would enter the client's life in a weird way, like she would befriend her client's girlfriend.
Yeah, that is
like
definitely
without the girlfriend realizing that's her boyfriend's therapist. So she would do that to get more information to help her patient. I'm going to put in quote.
Yeah, that's like not therapy.
Definitely not.
Not even forensic psychology.
I mean, it sounds like a very show, but that is definitely.
And I was just thinking of like that show Working Moms, and the therapist on Working Moms. Like that's not a therapist either.
Or a lot of people like to talk about The Sopranos and the psychologist there, and I'm just like, that's not. This is a TV psychologist.
Yeah.
Right. It's crazy.
Show I saw where there was a decent therapist portrayal, and I can't remember the name of the show. It was like a mother and daughter main character, but whatever. One show out of all the shows with a therapist. So I think
it's crazy.
Yeah, lots of education, and also just like normalizing the therapy process, right? A lot of people think, oh, there has to be something wrong with me to go to therapy. Yes. There's nothing wrong with, if you're about to get married and you want to go to a therapist because you're trying to talk out, hey, this is a new thing I've never done before.
Right.
I always say you don't wait until you have a rotten tooth to go to the dentist.
Exactly.
You don't wait until you're having a heart attack to go to the doctor. Like, you go for your annual, you go for your cleaning. You don't wait for the engine to blow up to bring it to the mechanic. You get your oil changed. Why is mental health any different than any other thing in your life?
cannot you know me, that is my motto. I'm trying to get people to talk about mental health the same way we talk about physical health,
Yeah.
because it's just as if not more important in my opinion. And I think even like sometimes when I'm explaining mental health to people, I try to put it in physical health terms, and they seem to sometimes get it
Yeah.
at that point. And I'm like, man, if only we can have these conversations about mental health the same way we have about like a broken arm or a cold. Nobody's questioning you. Like there's something out here. Maybe you don't need a cast. Maybe you just need like a little stint or something. Like there's so many
Right.
different things that you can do. Don't get me started. That's a whole nother episode right there.
Mm,
Thank
definitely.
you. Thank you, honestly, both for this conversation about finding the right therapist. A massive thank you to our guests, Chelsie Maccarone and Andrea Santiago, for shedding.
Cicada that just landed right here.
Are you
They got
freaking
that.
out?
Do you
Are you
hear it?
freaking out? I can't. Yes, I can.
I do not freak out.
That's so funny.
It's just
Thank you so much for shedding light on this topic. Remember, anybody that's watching and listening, it's not just about seeking help, but it's about seeking the right help. Your mental health journey is uniquely yours, and you deserve a therapist who resonates with your needs. So don't be afraid to shop around. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. And as always, my friends, keep spreading those good vibes. And remember, every day is a chance to shine a little bit brighter. Thank you again to Chelsie and Andrea. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank
both of you.
you.
And until next time, Vibers, much love and good vibes. Bye. See ya. We did it.